The soft jazz music drifted through the golden rose. One of the city's most exclusive restaurants, where crystal chandeliers cast warm light over silk-covered tables. This elegant atmosphere was the last place anyone expected to see Emma Chen. Walking in wearing cotton pajamas decorated with tiny teddy bears, gray sweatpants, and well-worn sneakers. Mo29, and head of marketing at Creative Solutions Inc., had only intended to make a quick appearance. Her best friend Sophia had canceled her blind date at the last minute due to a family emergency, begging Emma to go apologize in person. Emma thought she'd just pop in, say sorry, and leave within 5 minutes. She definitely hadn't expected the Golden Rose to be a 5-star establishment. And she absolutely hadn't expected the man sitting at table 12 to be Sebastian Knight. When Worlds Collide, Sebastian Knight, 34, was the CEO of Knight Technologies, a company that had been Emma's biggest competitor for the past year. They'd clashed during 3 major client presentations, each trying to outmaneuver the other with sharper strategies and better proposals. Sebastian had won 2 of those battles, but Emma had claimed victory in the most recent one just last month. Now, as the hostess guided Emma toward his table, she felt her stomach drop. Sebastian sat perfectly composed in his tailored navy suit, a glass of red wine in his hand. Dark eyes, watching her approach with what looked like barely contained amusement. "Miss Chen," Sebastian said smoothly as she reached the table. His voice, carrying that familiar hint of challenge she remembered from their business meetings. "I have to say, this is quite a departure from your usual power suits." Emma took a deep breath, planted her hand on her hip, and gave him the same confident smile she used in tough negotiations. "Mr. Knight, if I'd known I was meeting my biggest competitor, I would have worn my armor. But you're stuck with the teddy bears tonight." She pulled out the chair and sat down, deciding that running away would only give him the satisfaction of winning yet again. The restaurant revelation Sebastian raised his wine glass slightly, studying her with those calculating eyes that had intimidated many business rivals. "So this wasn't some elaborate strategy to throw me off balance for our next client meeting?" Emma laughed, the sound genuine and relaxed, despite the awkward situation. "Trust me, Knight, if I wanted to throw you off balance, I'd use actual business. Tactics, not sleepwear. My friend Sophia was supposed to meet someone here tonight, but she had an emergency. I came to apologize for her." "And I," Sebastian said, setting down his glass, "was set up by my assistant Ryan, who thinks I work too much. Apparently he arranged this through a mutual friend." His lips curved slightly, though I'm beginning to think Ryan knew exactly who he was setting me up with. The waiter appeared, looking slightly confused by Emma's attire, but maintaining professional composure. Emma ordered sparkling water and the salmon, while Sebastian requested another glass of wine and the steak. Sparks over dinner as their conversation unfolded. The competitive edge that usually defined their interactions began to shift into something more intriguing. They talked about the Singapore project where Emma had accidentally knocked over Sebastian's presentation materials, causing his team to scramble and ultimately lose the contract. "I still maintain that was completely accidental," Emma said, cutting into her perfectly prepared salmon. "Of course it was," Sebastian replied, his tone suggesting he didn't believe her for a second. "Just like it was accidental when you scheduled your presentation right after mine for the Morrison account, knowing they'd compare us directly. It's called strategic planning, not sabotage," Emma shot back. But she was smiling. "Maybe you should try it sometime." Sebastian leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. "I prefer to win through superior execution, not tricks." "And yet here you are, losing clients to my so-called tricks," Emma countered sweetly. The verbal sparring continued through dinner, but something had changed. The sharp edges of their professional rivalry were softening into playful banter, each testing the other's wit rather than trying to draw blood. Unexpected honesty as dessert arrived, a rich chocolate tart that Emma eyed appreciatively. Sebastian surprised her by asking a more personal question. "What made you choose marketing?" he asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than challenging. "You could have been a lawyer with that argumentative streak." Emma paused, considering whether to give him a surface answer or something real. Something about the way he asked, without his usual business persona, made her choose honesty. "My grandmother," she said simply. She ran a small bakery in Chinatown for 40 years, never spoke much English, but she understood people. She could look at someone and know exactly what kind of cake would make them happy. That's marketing in its purest form, understanding what people really want even when they don't know it themselves. Sebastian nodded slowly, and she caught a glimpse of something softer in his expression. "And your grandmother? Is she still?" "Passed last year," Emma said quietly. "But she left me her recipe book and a stubborn streak that refuses to back down from a challenge. Including challenges that involve teddy bear pajamas in five-star restaurants." Emma grinned. "Especially those, the evening's end." As the evening wound down, Sebastian signaled for the check despite Emma's protests. "I may be many things, Chen, but I'm not going to let a woman pay for dinner, especially when she showed up in pajamas to humor a friend." "That's very old-fashioned of you, Knight," Emma said, but she didn't push the issue. "I prefer to think of it as having standards," he replied, signing the receipt with a flourish. Outside the restaurant, they stood awkwardly for a moment under the soft glow of the street lamps. Emma's pajamas looked even more ridiculous in the elegant surroundings, but Sebastian found himself oddly charmed by her complete lack of self-consciousness about it. This was Sebastian began, then seemed to search for the right word. "Weird?" Emma supplied helpfully. "Unexpected," he corrected. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," Emma admitted. "You're almost human when you're not trying to steal my clients." Sebastian pulled out a business card and held it out to her. "In case you ever want to continue this conversation somewhere that allows proper attire." Emma took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. "Are you asking me out, Knight?" "At." "Because I should warn you, I don't date the competition." "At." "Maybe I'm asking you to consider a merger," he said with that hint of a smile she was beginning to recognize. "I'll think about it," Emma replied, tucking the card into her pajama pocket. "But don't expect me to make it easy for you." As Sebastian's car pulled up and he climbed into the back seat, Emma stood watching until the taillights disappeared around the corner. She looked down at her ridiculous outfit and shook her head, laughing softly. The aftermath back in her apartment? Emma found Sophia waiting with hot chocolate and an expectant expression. "Well," Sophia demanded, "how did it go? Please tell me you didn't completely traumatize Ryan's friend." Emma flopped onto the couch, still in her pajamas. Ryan's friend turned out to be Sebastian Knight. Sophia's eyes went wide. "Eh? The Sebastian Knight? Your business nemesis? The one you said has ice water in his veins and probably sleeps in suits." "The very one," Emma confirmed. "And he was different. Still arrogant, still infuriating, but there was something else there too." She pulled out his business card, studying the elegant lettering. "I think he might have asked me out, or proposed a business merger. With Sebastian Knight, it's hard to tell the difference." "Are you going to call him?" Emma tucked the card back into her pocket. "I haven't decided yet. Dating the competition seems like a terrible idea. Or," Sophia said with a grin, "it could be the best idea you've ever had." As Emma got ready for bed that night, she caught herself smiling at her reflection in the mirror. The teddy bear pajamas had been mortifying at first, but they'd also stripped away all pretense, forcing both her and Sebastian to interact as people rather than corporate rivals. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe terrible ideas sometimes turned into the best ones. The business card sat on her nightstand, a small rectangle of possibility in the soft glow of her bedside lamp. Emma fell asleep wondering what Sebastian Knight might be like when he wasn't, trying to win at everything, and whether she'd have the courage to find out. 3 weeks after their pajama dinner encounter, Emma found herself standing in the marble lobby of the Ocean View Villa Resort, rolling her suitcase behind her and trying not to think about the business card that had been sitting untouched on her nightstand. She was here for a 3-day marketing conference, focusing on emerging digital strategies for the luxury market. What she hadn't expected was to hear a familiar voice behind her at the reception desk. "There seems to be some confusion with the booking," Sebastian Knight was saying to the flustered receptionist, his tone patient but firm. Emma's heart skipped as she turned around. Sebastian stood there in casual khakis and a white button-down shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. His dark hair was slightly mussed from travel, and without his usual business armor, he seemed more approachable, more real. "Right." Emma approached the desk, confusion clear in her voice. "What are you doing here?" Sebastian turned, and for just a moment, His composed expression cracked into something that might have been pleased surprise. Chen, I'm here for the Luxury Marketing Summit, and apparently we have a problem. The receptionist, a young woman named Maria, looked between them nervously. I'm so sorry, but there's been a system error. Both of your companies booked the same villa for the conference week. It's our premium 2-bedroom suite, with a shared living space and kitchen. With the festival in town, we're completely booked, and this is the only accommodation we have available. Forced proximity. Emma stared at the receptionist, then at Sebastian, then back at the receptionist. You're telling me we have to share a villa? The bedrooms are completely separate, Maria said quickly, and the living area is quite spacious. There's a full kitchen, a private terrace overlooking the ocean, and fine, Sebastian interrupted. His business instincts kicking in. We're both adults, can handle a professional arrangement for 3 days. Emma wanted to argue, but she could see the logic. The conference was important for both their companies, and causing a scene wouldn't help anyone. All right, she said reluctantly. But I'm taking the room with the better view. Naturally, Sebastian replied with that almost smile she remembered from dinner, cooking up chemistry that evening. They found themselves in the villa's gourmet kitchen, preparing dinner before the welcome reception. The conference had provided ingredients for a collaborative cooking challenge among attendees, and Emma had volunteered them both before realizing what she was doing. I can't believe I signed us up for this, Emma muttered, tying an apron over her casual sundress. I barely cook for myself, let alone for a competition. Sebastian rolled up his sleeves, revealing surprisingly muscular forearms. Relax, Chen. How hard can it be? Famous last words. Within 30 minutes, they had flour in their hair, tomato sauce splattered across the counter, and what was supposed to be a simple pasta dish looking more like a culinary disaster. The recipe says to fold the pasta gently, Emma read from her phone, gesturing at the pot with a wooden spoon. I am folding gently, Sebastian protested, though his stirring looked more like aggressive mixing. It's not folding, that's beating it into submission. I prefer the direct approach, he said, but he lightened his touch. Emma laughed despite herself. Of course you do. You probably negotiate the same way, and you probably cook the same way you run marketing campaigns, Sebastian shot back. Overthinking. Every detail until the moment passes, Emma protested, but she was smiling. My attention to detail is why I beat you on the Morrison account. Your attention to detail is why your pasta's now glue, Sebastian pointed out. Holding up a spoon coated in thick, sticky noodles. Deeper conversations after they'd managed to salvage something edible from their cooking disaster they sat on. The villa's terrace, overlooking the moonlit ocean. The sound of waves provided a soothing backdrop as they shared a bottle of wine from the villa's collection. Can I ask you something? Emma said, curling her legs under her in the comfortable chair. The ocean breeze played with her hair, and she'd changed into soft jeans and a flowing top that made her look younger, less armored. Shoot, Sebastian said, leaning back in his chair. He'd lost the button-down shirt in favor of a simple t-shirt. That highlighted how broad his shoulders actually were. Why do you do this? The company, the competition, the constant battles. What's driving you? Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. My father, he said finally. He built Night Technologies from nothing, worked himself to death trying to prove he belonged in rooms full of people who'd inherited their success. He died when I was 25, and I promised him I'd make the company everything he dreamed it could be. Emma felt her chest tighten. And have you? By every measurable standard, yes. But sometimes I wonder if I'm still trying to prove myself to a man who isn't here to see it. Sebastian looked out at the ocean. What about you? What's Emma Chen really fighting for? Emma considered deflecting, giving him the same surface answer she gave everyone. But something about the moonlight and his unexpected vulnerability made her choose truth. Security, she said simply. Growing up, we moved a lot. My parents chased opportunities that never quite panned out. I swore I'd create something stable, something that couldn't be taken away. Every client I win, every campaign, that succeeds. It's another brick in the wall I'm building against uncertainty. And yet you showed up to dinner in teddy bear pajamas, Sebastian observed gently. Emma laughed, the sound soft in the night air. That was Sophia's fault. But maybe sometimes I get tired of always being so careful, so controlled. I noticed, Sebastian said. And there was something warm in his voice that made Emma's pulse quicken. The almost moment as the night grew later. They moved closer together on the terrace, the conversation flowing between business strategies and childhood memories, professional ambitions and personal fears. Emma found herself studying Sebastian's face in the soft light, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how his guard dropped when he talked about his father. Meh, Sebastian said quietly, and the use of her first name sent a shiver down her spine. I need to tell you something. What? She whispered, suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting. That night at the restaurant in your ridiculous pajamas was the first time in years someone surprised me. Really surprised me. Emma's breath caught. Sebastian? No, this is complicated. We're competitors, colleagues, and probably terrible for each other's careers, but Emma's phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at it apologetically. It's my assistant. Should take this. The call was about a client emergency that required Emma's immediate attention. By the time she hung up 20 minutes later, Sebastian had retreated to his room, and the spell of the evening was broken. Morning after awkwardness, the next morning, they were back to professional politeness, as if the previous night's vulnerability had never happened. At the conference sessions, they sat on opposite sides of the room. During lunch, they made polite small talk about industry trends while carefully avoiding anything personal. But Emma couldn't stop thinking about the way Sebastian had looked at her in the moonlight, or the way her name had sounded in his voice. And she noticed that he seemed to be watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. His expression unreadable but intense. The revelation on their final night at the villa. Emma was packing when she heard Sebastian talking on the phone in the living room. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but his voice carried. Ryan, I don't care what the board says about mixing business with personal matters. Some things are worth the risk. There was a pause. Yes, I'm talking about Emma Chen. And no, I don't have a plan. For the first time in my career, I'm just following my instincts. Emma's heart pounded as she realized he was talking about her. She'd been so focused on protecting herself, on maintaining professional distance, that she'd almost missed what was right in front of her when Sebastian hung up. Emma appeared in the doorway, her suitcase forgotten. Sebastian, she said, and he turned, startled. Emma, I didn't realize you were, I heard, she interrupted softly. About following instincts instead of plans. They stood looking at each other across the living room, the air thick with everything they hadn't said. My instincts are telling me this is a terrible idea, Emma admitted. Mine too, Sebastian replied, but he took a step toward her. We could ruin everything. Our careers, our companies, our reputations. We could, he agreed, taking another step. I don't date competitors, Emma said, but her voice was barely above a whisper now. I don't either, Sebastian said, now close enough to touch her. But maybe it's time we both broke our own rules, when he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. Emma felt like she was falling off a cliff. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely against everything she'd planned for her life. But as she kissed him back, she realized that maybe the best things happened when you stopped planning and started living. 2 weeks after returning from the villa, Emma's carefully constructed professional world began to crumble. It started with whispers in the office hallways, curious glances during meetings, and hushed conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Someone had seen her and Sebastian together at the resort, and the rumors spread through the business community like wildfire. Emma, we need to talk, said Jennifer Walsh, her company's CEO, as Emma arrived at work Monday morning. Jennifer's expression was grim as she gestured toward her office. Emma followed, her stomach sinking. She'd been expecting this conversation, but hoping it wouldn't come so soon. I'm hearing some disturbing rumors about you and Sebastian Knight, Jennifer said without preamble. Please tell me you're not romantically involved with our biggest competitor. Emma sat straighter in her chair, choosing her words carefully. Sebastian and I have developed a professional respect for each other. Nothing more. It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Since the villa, she and Sebastian had exchanged several late-night phone calls that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with getting to know each other as people rather than rivals. Good, Jennifer said, though she still looked concerned. Because I'm putting you in charge of our biggest pitch of the year. The Hamilton Group is looking for a complete brand overhaul, and if we land this contract, it could make our entire year. But Emma, if there's any hint of impropriety or divided loyalties, it could destroy not just your career, but our entire company's reputation. The setup: the Hamilton Group presentation was scheduled for the following Friday at their downtown headquarters. Emma threw herself into preparation, working 16-hour days and perfecting every detail. She knew Sebastian's company would be pitching as well, but she refused to let personal feelings interfere with professional excellence. What she didn't know was that Rebecca Vale, Sebastian's ex-girlfriend and a marketing director at a competing DR firm, had been watching the developing relationship between Emma and Sebastian with growing resentment. Rebecca had never gotten over Sebastian, and the thought of him with someone else, especially someone she considered beneath his social status, drove her to desperate measures. Rebecca had connections throughout the industry. She began spreading more targeted rumors. Not just that Emma and Sebastian were involved, but that Emma was using the relationship to gain inside information about Sebastian's pitches, essentially cheating her way to success. The confrontation the night before the Hamilton presentation: Emma was working late in her office when Sebastian appeared in her doorway. He looked tense, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. Emma looked up from her laptop, noting the serious expression on his face. "If this is about tomorrow's pitch, I can't discuss. It's about Rebecca," Sebastian interrupted. "She's been spreading rumors about us, about you specifically. She's telling people you're getting inside information from me." Emma's blood ran cold. "That's ridiculous. We've never discussed business strategy, and anyone who knows me would know I'd never cheat." "I know that," Sebastian said firmly. "But not everyone does, Emma. I think she's planning something for tomorrow. Something bigger than just rumors." The Hamilton presentation the next morning. Emma arrived at Hamilton Group headquarters early, dressed in her most professional suit and carrying presentation materials she'd tripled. The Hamilton executive team, led by CEO David Hamilton himself, sat around an impressive conference table in a room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Overlooking the city, Emma's presentation was flawless. She outlined a comprehensive rebranding strategy that would position Hamilton Group as an innovative leader while honoring their traditional values. Her data was solid, her creative concepts were inspired, and her delivery was confident and engaging. When she finished, the room erupted in approving murmurs. David Hamilton himself nodded approvingly. "Impressive work, Miss Chen. Very impressive indeed." Emma felt a surge of relief and pride. Whatever Rebecca was planning, it couldn't diminish the quality of her work. Then Rebecca Vale walked into the conference room. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Rebecca said, her voice carrying artificial concern, "but I felt obligated to bring some information to your attention before you make your final decision." Emma's heart started pounding as Rebecca placed a manila folder on the conference table. These are email records and phone logs showing extensive communication between Ms. Chen and Sebastian Knight over the past month. Communication that coincides exactly with her preparation for this presentation. The defense: David Hamilton frowned as he opened the folder. "Ms. Chen, can you explain these communications?" Emma felt the walls closing in. The phone records were real. She and Sebastian had talked many times, but none of those conversations had been about business. They'd talked about books, childhood memories, their fears and dreams, everything except work. "Mr. Hamilton," Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Yes, Sebastian Knight and I have been in communication, but I can assure you that none of our conversations involved sharing proprietary business information." "How can we be sure of that?" Rebecca interjected sweetly. "After all, pillow talk between lovers often includes all sorts of confidential information." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Emma felt her carefully built reputation crumbling in real time. "That's enough," came a strong voice from the doorway. Everyone turned as Sebastian Knight walked into the conference room, his expression thunderous. "The Knight's Gambit, Mr. Hamilton. Members of the board," Sebastian said with formal courtesy. "I apologize for the interruption, but I couldn't stand by while someone destroys the reputation of the most ethical businesswoman I've ever known." Rebecca's face went pale. "Sebastian, what are you doing here?" "Cleaning up your mess, Rebecca," Sebastian said coldly. He placed his own folder on the table. "These are the complete transcripts of every communication between Ms. Chen and myself. As you'll see, we discussed literature, travel, family history, and personal philosophy. At no point did either of us share proprietary business information. In fact, Ms. Chen specifically refused to discuss business matters, even when I attempted to bring them up. He turned to face the Hamilton executives directly. Ms. Chen's presentation today represents her own brilliant work, created entirely independently of any influence from my company. I know this because my firm also prepared a pitch for this contract, and our approach is completely different from hers. In fact, Sebastian smiled slightly. Her strategy is significantly better than ours. David Hamilton looked between the folders. Then at Rebecca, whose face was now bright red with embarrassment and anger. "Mr. Knight," Hamilton said slowly, "are you withdrawing your company's bid?" "I am," Sebastian said firmly. Hamilton Group deserves the best marketing strategy available, and that's what Ms. Chen has presented to you today. Personal feelings aside, this is the right business decision. The truth about love after, the Hamilton executives asked Rebecca to leave and confirmed that they wanted to move forward with Emma's proposal. Emma found herself alone with Sebastian in the now empty conference room. "You just gave up a multi-million-dollar contract," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For me." Sebastian moved closer to her, his eyes intense. "Emma, I'd give up a lot more than that for you. But your company, your reputation." "What will people say?" "They'll say I'm crazy," Sebastian replied, reaching out to touch her face gently, "and they'll be right. I'm crazy about you, Emma Chen. Crazy enough to risk everything." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "But Sebastian, this is all so complicated. We work in the same industry. We'll always be competitors in some way." "Then we'll compete," Sebastian said simply. "We'll push each other to be better, stronger, more innovative. But we'll do it together." "And Rebecca? The rumors?" Sebastian's expression hardened slightly. "Rebecca will find that her behavior today has consequences. As for the rumors, let them talk. People who matter will see the truth." 6 months later, Emma stood in the same conference room where everything had changed. But this time she was wearing a flowing white dress instead of a business suit. The Hamilton Group had graciously offered their space for a small wedding ceremony, saying it was the least they could do for the couple whose love story had begun with such professional excellence. "I still can't believe you're marrying your biggest competitor," Sophia said, adjusting Emma's veil. Emma laughed, looking out the window where Sebastian was greeting their small group of family and friends. "I'm not marrying my competitor anymore. As of this morning, Knight Technologies and Creative Solutions, Inc. are officially merging. A business merger and a marriage merger," Sophia grinned. "Only you would negotiate your own wedding contract," actually, Emma said with a smile. Sebastian proposed the business merger. Said if we were going to spend the rest of our lives together, we might as well build something amazing together too. As the ceremony began and Emma walked toward Sebastian, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From teddy bear pajamas to boardroom battles to seaside confessions to public scandals, their path to love had been anything but conventional. But as Sebastian took her hands and smiled that rare, genuine smile that was reserved just for her, Emma knew that every obstacle, every challenge, every risk had been worth it. "Ready for the biggest merger of your career?" Sebastian whispered, as they turned to face the officiant. "With you?" Emma whispered back. "I'm ready for anything." And for the first time in her carefully planned life, Emma Chen Knight was completely blissfully certain that sometimes the best strategies were the ones you never saw coming. The end.